Can someone please explain? A few years back I was driving down a country lane with my sister close to Christmas time in the UK. It was late at night and very cold. My car skidded round a corner and lost grip, sending us tumbling down a ditch and into a farmer's field. Initially we were both okay, however the car's bumper had come off and the wheel had flown off. We got out the car and rang my boyfriend who was at work and not answering, so we stood in the field for some time waiting for him to finally see his phone. At some point a nice, normal lady pulled over who said she would drive to the village and ask her husband to come back with a tow rope. About an hour passed and there was no sign of the woman or her husband, and it was freezing cold. Then a lorry pulled up with two men speaking in Scouse accent who said they could pull the car out and help us. The lorry seemed well equipped, but everything in me told me not to let these men near us, even though we were stranded and freezing. So I declined their offer and they drove off. About 10 minutes later they came back and said they couldn't leave us there and really wanted to help, yet I was still on edge and alarm bells ringing, so I declined again. However, they didn't listen this time and got out of their lorry walking towards us. The next thing I remember is a completely different man in a different vehicle putting a tow rope on my car and putting on the spare tire, making it drive-able for the short distance to my boyfriend's workplace. This man was the husband of the previously mentioned woman. I had a bad pain in my shoulder which was later diagnosed as a broken collarbone, however I did not feel this until after I remember the man coming to help. This man said that his wife had told him to come and help and he had left straight away, which in no way could have taken the time that we had waited. We were very attentive to the time as we were waiting for my boyfriend's break so he would see his phone. Discussing it later on, my sister has no memory of these two Scouse men and only remembers waiting a long time for the woman's husband to come. How has this happened? And why do I have no memory of what happened after they got out of their car? Bloody man at the door. This happened many years ago. I think I was 12 at the time. I grew up in a nice neighborhood in an old two-story Victorian house. We lived in the foothills of the Santa Cruz Mountains on a corner of a quiet street. It was a cool area to grow up in, lots of nature to explore and few fences to stop kids and their dogs from exploring it. I'm the oldest of four, but at this time my parents didn't think I was old enough to stay at home taking care of them by myself for a night. So they hired a babysitter to watch us. I had a huge crush on her. She was 17 and gorgeous, so I was okay with the deal. It was just a normal summer night, warm and with a bright moon. It was late, probably around 11 p.m. My brother and sisters had gone to bed. I was up reading and the babysitter was watching TV downstairs. Me and my little brother shared a big room on the second floor that looked out over the front yard. I was reading in my bed when suddenly my brother, in a frightened type voice, called my name. I thought he was dreaming, but then he stood bolt upright in bed and stared out the window. This obviously freaked me the fuck out, so I ran over to him. My brother then pointed out what he was looking out and asked me, "Who is that man?" Down in the front yard, about 20 yards away, was a lanky, long-haired man looking up into the sky. His arms were outstretched and he was slowly spinning. Then he started moaning. I immediately started to panic. This was how some of those horror movies start. I jumped up and ran out into the hallway, for once glad that my parents had not put me in charge. Waiting for me in the hallway were my sisters, who had been woken up by the noise outside. And the babysitter came tearing up the stairs, wide-eyed. Now I was really scared. Nobody knew what to do, and the sitter wasn't offering up any ideas. For some reason I decided to call our neighbor across the street. He was a true curmudgeon, but he knew us. I guess I figured he wouldn't be scared. I grabbed the phone, no cell phones or even cordless ones back then. He answered after a few rings, and I asked him if he could see anyone out front. We saw him on the front lawn, which he had a clear view of from his house. He was obviously annoyed, but he did go look. A couple minutes later, he returned to the phone and told me there was nothing and I needed to go back to bed. Click! We were in no state to do that. I quickly returned to my brother's window and looked again. Big moon flooding the lawn with light. No man. We tried to listen for the moaning. Nothing but the symphony of crickets. The sitter was not going back downstairs alone, and nobody else was going to sleep anytime soon. We all agreed we should go down together and make sure all the doors and windows were locked. We crept downstairs and quickly broke into 2 groups to check all the doors. I was with the sitter to check the front, my siblings the back of the house. All went well, locks were secured, no weirdos barging into the house. But the sitter wanted me to look outside one more time. I was still fucking scared, conjuring up way too many Friday the 13th and Halloween scenes in my head that my friends and I had covertly watched on their cable during sleepovers. But I didn't want to show it in front of the woman of my dreams. Just one more look, and maybe, just maybe, I'd get to be in something like that Revenge of the Nerds movie I also wasn't supposed to watch. So I quietly moved to the front window, which faced the front steps to our front door. I craned my neck to look out towards the driveway and back towards the lawn where we had seen him before. Nothing. And then suddenly, he was there, running full speed at the window. Half his face was gone, a mess of blood and torn flesh. He has blood all down his shirt and on his shorts. The sitter screamed, and I dropped to the floor in the most unmanly way possible. My siblings were crying in the hallway. He started pounding on the front door and yelling incoherently. I remember him saying at some point to let me in please. Even though that seemed extremely polite for a mass murderer, there was no fucking way I was going to acquiesce to that request. Besides, I was frozen in fear on the floor. The most I could muster in a squeaky little boy voice was, "See we can't help you, please go away." At least I did something. Our protector, the sitter, was long gone. He pounded on the door some more, gave a disappointed and helpless final yelp, and staggered off into the night. I just laid there for a little while. After that, my siblings ran upstairs and huddled together. Soon after, 20 minutes or so, we saw lights and sirens. The sitter had done the same thing in her flight into the bowels of our home, and did the one thing that had never occurred to the rest of us: call 911. They found the bloody man wandering down the street, and our nightmare was over. Turned out he was a cyclist that went out for a full moon ride on a beautiful summer night. But he didn't see the storm ditch on our corner when he took a tight turn at high speed. He slid on his face for at least 20 feet. He eventually came to, but he was so delirious from his injuries and the shock that he was off his rocker. He had been wandering around for a while before any of us knew he was there. We found blood trails crisscrossing the front of the property the next morning. I still feel bad I didn't help him, but I was just a scared kid. My parents didn't go out without us for a while. For years, I was traumatized coming home at night. An electric ball hit my foot. One morning, I woke up and sat at the edge of my bed, rubbing my eyes, getting ready to walk to the bathroom. It was still dark outside and my lights were off. All of a sudden, an object, the shape of a ball, hit my left foot. I call it an electric ball because as soon as it hit my foot, I heard the sound of electricity. The size of the ball was about half the size of a tennis ball. No, I did not see the electric ball with my own eyes, but if a ball-like object drops on your bare foot, you can easily recognize its shape and size if it's a ball-shaped object. After it dropped on my foot, it rolled on the carpet towards my bedroom door. How do I know this without actually seeing it with my own eyes? I felt the vibrations on my foot of the ball moving on the carpet, which, I assume, proves that the ball wasn't very lightweight but had a bit of weight to it. I believe someone was standing beside me or in front of me and dropped the electric ball on my foot. This is the vibe have. Good thing the electric ball didn't shock me, lol. I've experienced paranormal activities before, but nothing like this. So my first reaction was, I assumed a mouse was crawling on the ceiling and it fell on my foot. I immediately began to investigate by looking under my bed and everywhere inside my room. To my surprise, I found nothing. Then I began to think this was a paranormal experience due to the electricity sound I heard. I was not afraid, just confused, even after I realized I experienced a paranormal event.